Okay, hello. An update on Ukraine today. Things have slowed a little in the last day in terms of news coming out of Ukraine and clearly in terms of the Ukrainian offensive. Part of this reason seems to have been due to weather over the last 48 hours. There's been reports of some very heavy rain occurring, and this has led to difficulties in flying drones, flying helicopters. So this is some of the reasons that seem to be given for some of the advances that have been made in the last day or so by the Ukrainians. Some of the Russian troops are claiming that due to the heavy rain, they couldn't get their observational drones into the air. And the rain was cover for the Ukrainians to allow them to make advances. Also, as you can imagine, if you've got heavy wind and rain, it's probably not ideal environment for flying helicopters around. Obviously, helicopters are powerful machines, but still they're likely to suffer in those conditions. And so there may have been some slowing of them getting into the air for a little while too. Look, the Ukrainians are reporting advances. In fact, the Ukrainian Deputy Minister of Defense, Hanna Maliar, has reported that in the last week, the Ukrainians have advanced 6.5 kilometres. I don't know, it's probably about 4 miles into the Russian defended area, and that they've captured an area of 90 square kilometres. So this offensive has been going on for about 9 days now, so that's an average of 10 square kilometres per day they've been capturing in a country of 603,000 square kilometres. So putting this into perspective, while there's a lot of media hype and reporting about the Ukrainian advances, those advances are on a very small scale. And the area that they're primarily being reported from, which is around the Donetsk area, around the small hamlets or townships of Neskuchne and Makavivka and Blahodatne. Some of these small townships are really hamlets. One of them I've heard reported upon as being not much more than just like a large farm dwelling, handful of buildings there. And these are on an area known as, referred to as the ledge, which I think is due to the fact that just to the west of them, there seems to be a rise up, a slight, an increase in height if you look at the topographical maps. And so I'm imagining this is the ledge area they're referring to. But some of these locations have changed hands already a number of times. Makavivka today, in looking at reports today, there's been at least twice today it's been claimed by the Ukrainians and by the Russians again. So the Ukrainians are taking these places for a period of time, and these are locations that have been evacuated of any inhabitants some time ago. There's very little there. There's no strategic advantage to holding these areas. There is definitely some PR advantage, and media advantage to being able to raise the Ukrainian flag in these areas and claim that advances are being made. But quite often, just after the Ukrainians take these locations, they lose them again to the Russians because the Russians have these locations dialed in with their artillery. So they run in, raise a flag, and then they get blasted back out again and need to retreat. So in reality, there doesn't seem to be a great deal of advancement really happening over the first week of the offensive. I think this also has to be balanced too with some other reporting which is coming out from the last 48 hours. Reporting indicating that the Russians were able to destroy the headquarters and communications centre of the 65th and 47th Brigade and also the 15th Brigade. The 47th is one of the 9 recently formed NATO-trained, NATO-funded brigades. And if the reporting is correct, if it's to be believed, then the headquarters of the 47th, after suffering the dramatic losses of Bradley fighting vehicles and leopards, has now also been destroyed. There's also reports that some Ukrainian jets have been brought down in the last couple of days as well. So on that topic of Western armour losses, reports are being made that 30% of what was supplied recently may have already been lost. Again, So there's some verification for this coming through. Oryx, who report, it's an open source site, and they report upon visually confirmed losses. Yeah, they are confirming that 6 Bradleys have been destroyed. Sorry, that 16 Bradleys have been destroyed. That 6 leopards have been destroyed. That upwards of 58 to 60 tanks in total have been destroyed in this Ukrainian offensive. Now, of course, the Russians are suffering losses here as well. However, given the nature of the fighting, given that they're defending, given that they're aware of these locations with artillery and air superiority in the area, it's to be expected that the numbers are far lower on the Russians' sides at this time. Even though I have seen from General Taravarsky from the Ukrainians reporting that large numbers of Russian armour has been lost, we're not seeing the same video footage of that being shown. We're not seeing the same reports of that really in either the Ukrainian or the Russian Telegram channels, at least not reporting there, which is giving sort of evidence of that. Whereas with the Ukrainian losses, we've got a lot of video evidence coming out of what's been happening there. So there's also need to consider that while we're focusing on this area of the offensive, the Ukrainians are suffering losses all up and down the line. As they have been for the last 6 months or so, while the Russians were just slowly grinding down defences. That's continuing, not getting the same media coverage, but that's also continuing today. Okay, some other news, not directly related to the fighting in the Donbass and eastern Zaporozhye region. But there are reports in the last 48 hours that Russian ship has encountered Ukrainian drones in the Black Sea. The Russian ship was out there apparently monitoring and patrolling the 2 pipelines that come down from Russia down into Turkey, and they're reporting that there was a US Global Hawk drone in the area, reconnaissance drone, which they believe will have been involved in guiding the attacks of these drones upon the Ukrainian ship. Now, my understanding from the reporting I've read and seen is that the Ukrainians were using sort of autonomous, to some extent, drones, explosive drone-filled boats here, and that the Russians were defending them with manual capabilities. So basically, men on guns on the boat were shooting them. So this does lead, I guess, to the inevitable situation that at some stage, if this is kept up, that eventually some of these drones will get through and will just damage or destroy one of these Russian ships in the Black Sea. I think that just becomes a numbers game. If the Ukrainians have sufficient numbers of these to send at them from multiple directions at one time, then it's quite possible that they will be successful at some stage. Now, NATO is busy in the news at the moment. So NATO has got the Vilnius summit for the 11th to 12th of July in Lithuania, and they have the defence ministers meeting this week in Brussels. So there's a lot going on there. Interestingly, Ankara, the capital of Turkey, Turkey is likely to block Sweden and Finland's desire to enter NATO. The resistance from Turkey seems to, at least on the surface, be based on claims from Turkey that Sweden has been harbouring members of the PKK, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, who in 1984 were involved in an uprising against Turkey. And also perhaps harbouring some people involved in a 2016 attempted coup in Turkey. So while this is on the surface, the reasons given for why they're not wanting to let Sweden and Finland into the NATO group of nation states, there is speculation that there are other reasons here, and some of those could be, and perhaps quite possibly all of these may be true, but some of the other ones being discussed are that Turkey is in a position here of power where, if, say, the US and the UK and perhaps Germany and Poland really do wish for Sweden and Finland to enter into NATO, then Turkey is in a position now of holding power over that and perhaps being able to use that in other negotiations with those states for other things they may desire. Also, Turkey holding out on this would be seen, I would imagine, in Moscow as being supportive of Russia. So Russia obviously not interested in having more NATO states on their border. Would see this as support from Turkey, and Turkey and Russia do have close ties. Turkey's in an unusual position, having such close ties with Russia and yet being a NATO member state. But Turkey perhaps looking at what it's seeing with the offensive and what's been happening, being perhaps getting a more balanced view of what's going on, not just the Western NATO view of events, but also the Russian one. Maybe reading what they see in the future as being perhaps a possible Russian victory in Ukraine, and looking to make sure they're on the right side of that. As for them economically, there would be big benefits in them being aligned with Russia if Russia were to be victorious in this battle in Ukraine. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but this might be some of the things that Turkey's considering and perhaps some of the underlying reasons why they're blocking the entry of Sweden and Finland to NATO. We've there's a few things to watch around NATO at the moment. Last week in Moldova, if you saw their President Vučić of Serbia and the Dutch, I've lost his name now. Sorry. This Dutch foreign minister, he was in a public, not spat, but dressing down of Zelensky in sort of a public square where he gave the sign of sort of yapping and talking too much to Zelensky. So there's that. There's also, if we look at Hungary, so Hungary also not allowing or blocking at this stage the access of Sweden into NATO. Now, this is due to them suggesting that there's been criticism of Sweden, of their president, Orbán, and, well, again, that may well be the surface reason. There may be other reasons why they are also blocking that entry there. But I think it's worthwhile keeping an eye on the news around NATO, the parties in NATO, and keeping a close eye out for any divisions that may occur there. As this conflict progresses and we may reach a decision point for NATO and the UN as to, do we embark upon a NATO-led war with Russia, or does NATO accept a loss in Ukraine and take that path? In either case, I think we're looking at some very interesting times ahead in Europe. We've also got, just kicking off today, the Air Defender NATO Air Force exercises in Germany, Czech Republic, Romania and Poland. I saw some footage today there of a number of very heavy, large American aircraft flying around on manoeuvres. Again, something to watch over the coming days to see if that might be the big surprise that's been talked about. All right, thank you very much for watching this. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the channel. I'll be out with another update in the next couple of days.